All right, we're going to talk to the happy group today. The happy hog farmer who's got the world by the tail as long as it doesn't have PED attached to it. You guys saw the hog and pig report. Surprising versus expectations, no question. But I would say one thing is it was more surprising. And I thought immediately when I saw it, I said, well, that's not really friendly July and August, but it could be friendly over a longer period of time now than what we initially thought. And that's kind of how the market performed yesterday, with all the strength in the deferreds. You know, the most surprising thing in there, you know, they expected to see a 1.6% increase in the breeding herd. We saw a 0.2% decrease instead. That's a pretty big miss on the breeding number. And it really got a lot of analysts thinking that, like, which you guys, to your credit, have been saying, you know, you're not expanding. You're trying to catch, you know, when you're dealing with one problem, the last thing on your mind is, hey, let's have more of these problems, you know, even though in hindsight it may not be such a bad idea, but it's just kind of human nature, you know, to deal with the problem at hand. The all pigs number was the lowest since June of 2007. Lowest for any quarter since March of 2007. Put it in perspective, we're supplying 5.7% more pork to U.S. consumers, exporting 75% more pork than we did in 2007 with fewer hogs. You know, that's one thing I think a lot of people miss. PED is PED. And if you guys recall, there was a lot of call for 10, 12% fewer hogs. A lot of really well thought of analysts saying we were going to see 10 to 12% fewer hogs. And what's interesting, and remember when we ran through the math and we came up with more like 6%, because we were saying if you took everybody, you know, spread it out over time, it'd be about, and that's by and large what it looks like, 5–6%. It was also surprising. I think people were surprised at like some of the lighter weight hogs, because it didn't translate as well in terms of everyone looked at like February as kind of being the peak of the PED season, but it's dragged out longer than what Robert said. And that, after talking to you, I bought October hogs. Thank you, Robert. One kid through college. That discussion we had was about the secondary infections and how it dragged on. You know, Robert basically said that their experience has been, you know, the first virulent 100% death loss, they got out relatively quickly. The second time around, be it, I know you've talked about, you know, these hogs are just under so much pressure in terms of disease that it's not just PED, they're getting nicked by other things as well because of them, you know. Yes, they're not dying maybe to the degree they were, but it's, you're losing the same number of hogs spread out over a longer period. And, you know, PED, in my opinion, at this point, is like PRRS and a lot of diseases. It's just something you're going to have to manage as it comes through and continue to manage.
There's a new PRRS.
Oh, good.
It wipes out the first week.
Oh. That's all?
It's killing about 4%.
Frogs don't fall out of the sky or anything like that?
It's killing about 4% of the sows in those herds that have it.
Where's it been concentrated?
They found 2 herds in Indiana and 1 in North Carolina that I'm aware of. They've got it growing, so hopefully they'll have the strains available.
Well, so far, you know, we've managed this with, you know, weights. And we talked, long before they even started doing it, we said these packers are going to take big hogs, and now they're taking big hogs. And I think as people become more comfortable with the cycle, you know, saying this is just what we have to deal with now, and especially if you see grain prices cheap enough, the expansion will come. There's no question it's going to come. And people miss on how strong the demand side's been. We've had extremely strong demand for pork, despite prices, because when you think that pork looks expensive, go to try to eat that steak right next to it. You'll see what expensive it is. Holy moly.
Well, I told you the bacon was $11.95 a day, it's still idling.
That's crazy. So, and you know, we just, I think the biggest takeaway from that report was A, PED looks like it's got longer legs than what people thought. B, the market was really shocked that expansion wasn't underway yet. There were some goofy numbers in there. They had the farrowing intentions for SEPNOV were up 2.6%. Well, how do you farrow 2.6% when you don't have the, when you sit there and look at the sow herd and everything, it doesn't look like it makes any sense. But we've always had intentions. Road to Hell's paved with good ones, and most of the bad ones are in USDA reports. So,
what if they didn't hit the report? Right. I mean, as far as
which way?
What if the numbers are actually lower even than what these numbers say? Because a lot of times you talk about with the grain reports, they don't want to do it all in one report, so they'll kind of ease you into it.
At the beginning of PED, especially that the March one, everyone was like, they just did their best. They're probably way too well off. And it turned out they were close. If you go back and look at the March numbers, we're a little below there, but not 10, 12% like some people thought we might be. I saw people talking about 15%, real high numbers. So you got to give the USDA some credit. They did a pretty good job with this unpredictable situation. Could they be a little lower, Jeff? Yes, I think they could. Are they going to be substantially to move the needle? Probably not. I don't think they're going to miss it that much. They've had, over a year now since it started, and they've got several quarterly reports out of the way. And I don't think I wouldn't take, percent and a half off these numbers. I'd be surprised if it went that far. It's going to be more, in my opinion, it's going to be more of a demand situation, especially as we get past, peak demand, holidays, summer, see how we do going into fall. The best thing you have going for you right now is beef, really. That's been the best thing going for us is we're starting to see pork, and God bless them, the chicken guys haven't expanded. They've had problems of their own with breeding hens, and they've had some issues of their own to deal with. So, and they found out, much like the processors found out, much like your guys have, that we'll take the big birds. So they've been taking heavier birds as well to overcome some of the issues they've had with their breeding.
Cold storage looks good.
Cold storage was okay. Yeah, it wasn't. I saw some people say it was a little bearish, some a little bullish. It was mostly neutral versus expectations. Certainly wasn't, outright bearish. So that's good news. One of the things I read a report from, and one of you guys might have went out there. They're starting to, some of the builders, build buildings, whatever, they're starting to get inquiries. So it's around the corner. I definitely think it's around the corner in terms of building a herd. But people who've gotten burned by promises of low feed want to see low feed. And I think they're going to see low feed. And as soon as that becomes clear to them, you're going to start to see buildings go up to the degree that they, environmental concerns and everything else that you have to do, hoops you have to jump.
Dr. Robert, how long have you been meeting?
Yeah, it's a slow process even here in relatively friendly areas.
That's hard to believe.
It is fast.
At 1 o'clock this morning.
What do you have to do, sit there and listen to every Tom, Dick, and Harry complain about what a nuisance you are and
That's
everything?
literally what happened.
Like you were there.
Unless the Germans still passed it.
Well, they didn't have anything.
But, I think if you crunch all the numbers, what you really need to get out of the Friday report is that as long as we see demand perform like it has, I think you're going to see current prices better, current to better prices be maintained. If we start to see, and we don't operate in a vacuum, guys. Ultimately, that expansion is going to be globally if we have a global glut of grain. So, it won't last forever. I don't have a lot of confidence after talking to you guys and doing a little bit of reading with regard to these vaccines and what have you. It sounds pretty dicey as to the impact that it's having. It's certainly not a silver bullet, and I know one day when they announced that the USDA was going to approve, everybody was talking like, oh, this, and it never was that. It helps manage, I think, but it's certainly not a cure. Again, I think the most bullish thing in the report Friday was was the breeding and what the impact that'll have on, say, October forward contracts versus the nearby contracts. So, at this point, I'm comfortable resisting sales now. You know, we get another day like yesterday or another 2 days like that, you gotta start looking at things again. I do want to continue along that path. The last hedges we made, particularly in a, you know, when you get into these how high is high type environments, whether it be grains, whether it be hogs, or how low is low, you know, it used to be you'd sit there and say, well, you know, if selling a $1.20 a pound summer hog is wrong, I don't want to be right. Well, yeah, but you know, if you take your turn in the barrel vis-a-vis PED, you need to maximize all you can for those times when you don't have any hogs or your output's down. So I've been more inclined and will continue to be more inclined to look at strategies that give us some flexibility, that limit our downside completely, and maybe give us some upside in a what if. For example, those last ones I talked about, those July, August, where you know at the time 122 was resistance, 130 was the contract high, and we bought like a 116 put and did it for, sometimes they owed us money, sometimes we owed a little bit of money, so let's say costless on average. Do something like that, costless, you guarantee yourself no worse than, you know, like a 116 price. You might have to take 122, but if it goes over 130 and goes to 140, you can add $10 to your 122. So you're,
Is there a short dated hog auction?
it would be the volume you can do that if you could. So I'm really leaning in this environment at looking at those kind of strategies that, you know, you guys, of the people in the group, you know, you guys generate cash flow more than a lot of these guys do, and you know, they can get caught in cash crunches much more so because they're not turning cash all the time. You know, if we can put ourselves in things like this where we limit the amount, like our max burn, if you will, I really prefer those as to, you know, buying a put and selling a call and just say, well, I'm just going to live with that call wherever it goes. Because you don't know, you know, look at the cattle market for crying out loud. Who'd have ever thunk? I got a cattle guy in Ohio, he keeps trailing stops, and he's like, I never thought I'd live long enough to see $200 feeder cattle. Maybe I'll check with your doctor, see if you're all right. But, you know, but that's what you're up against in this environment. And, you know, there is a time and a place coming where, you know, we're going to look back and say, God, we should have done years worth of hogs at that time. I'm actually more concerned about the hog side than I'm the feed side. You know, if you're going to take your marketing dollar and say, where do I need to spend my marketing dollar? I think you have to look at the hog side more than the feed side. I think we can be more patient on the feed side in a buyer's market than you can in a hog market that sooner or later, and that's the million-dollar question, sooner or later is going to price itself to a point to encourage expansion, and we'll have an oversupply. When that day comes, you know, obviously it's not now. At the same time, the market doesn't always wait for now. But we'll reach that point sooner or later. You know, I'm thinking when I start seeing October hogs closing in on, you know, 120, we're going to have to get some of that. You know, we're just going to have to, not because PED, but because I know what demand does that time of year.
Because you own uncovered hog. You don't on the other side.
Yeah,
He's gotta get
here,
out.
take mine.
Yeah,
You can have,
what a good
I'll,
fella.
I'll call you guys and say, here, you can have mine. So, you know, we need to be looking at that in the next 30, 60 days and starting to get some of that coverage on it. And, you know, I think the other thing we need to start looking at is the seasonality of PED as well. I think we need to be careful out in those deep, deep defers, April, June's, because when that cold weather sets in again, you know, and how much is the market expecting? How many people have been reinfected? It's still a very, very small minority, but I don't think until this winter you're going to find out how bad reinfection will or won't be. When the conditions are right and right for it again, that's when you're going to find out. The guy who got it in February this year isn't expecting to get it in February of 2015. But if it goes for what we've seen so far, he probably going to get it again. So I think we need to be careful there, but we need to look at it in terms of where is our demand poorest, and you know, play a little bit of that against the seasonality of PED, because where will PED have its least impact? Near the end of the year, right? Okay, so that's where we need, those two are gonna line up where PED's doing this and demand's doing that at the same time. So we need to be looking at this next 30, 60 days at ramping up our hedging. You know, we've kind of sat back and let it come to us, And what's likely to happen, especially after yesterday, you know, the chart goes bang, 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 boom, boom, and then you say, okay, boom, I sell here, protect here. Protect the what if, but, you know, I'm not gonna get the top because I wanna see a top first, but I will protect the top. So I would be looking at something maybe, okay, and I'm just gonna throw some blanket figures out here. Let's say October goes to 120 and then falls back to 115, 16, where it is today. At that point, I think you start looking at selling a 115, 116 call. No, you buy sell the call there because you get a lot of premium. You buy the call at 120, and then maybe you buy a 112 put. So now you've got a floor of 112, a ceiling of 116, up to 120, and if it goes to 130, you get the difference between 20 and 30 to add to your 16. And do it as costless as possible. And looking at something along those lines to start looking at October, December, probably even into at least the early part of February, first half of February window. Futures window.
You see another situation where if you want to be 100% covered over, or 50% covered over 6 months, it's 100% in
Yes.
low demand
Yes,
periods.
I think you definitely have to look at that and play this PED seasonal, because when PED ramps up, so when those hogs are ready, that's your best demand window too. So I think you're gonna be looking at heavier on the front end, light on the back end. Now, what will change a little bit, Robert, is the deeper we get into those deferreds, you're gonna be looking at expansion. But that won't happen in time for June, July of 15. That'll be more of a fall, winter 15, early 16. That's where expansion can start to, you can start to see that impact. And guess what? That'll hit again when PED's on its downstroke again. So you can get the real double whammy come, you know, fall 15, winter 16 in that time frame. And that's when I see, you know, it could get ugly again. So you might, you know, marketed, low on marketings, marketed again, you know, and cover those periods, you know, where those two things come congruent to each other.
Assuming we don't have a vaccine in that time frame, I would think that we'll have a vaccine in the next 8 months.
We said that